The digital glow of the clock on the wall read 2 a.m. Yet Ibrahim Traoré was still in his office, the relentless ring of telephones a harsh soundtrack to the unfolding crisis. Around him, the central bank president, the economy minister, and a handful of trusted advisors huddled in an emergency session. On the large screen before them, a chilling sequence of news flashes painted a grim picture. French banks halt money transfers to Burkina Faso. IMF suspends loan payments. CFA franc being withdrawn from market. The chilling realization settled over them. The country's economic structure was on the brink, hours away from total collapse. Subscribe. We are already preparing the next hot issue for you. Traoré's fist slammed onto the table, the sharp crack echoing in the tense silence. This is how they've controlled us for years, he declared, his voice tight with suppressed fury. Even our money isn't our own. He then turned to his team, his gaze sweeping over their anxious faces, and began to outline a proposal so audacious that a collective gasp filled the room. Disbelief etched itself onto every face. "We can't do this," the finance minister stammered, his voice thin with panic. "Nobody has ever done it." A slow, resolute smile spread across Traoré's face. "Then we'll be the first." The tension in the presidential palace's meeting room was a living, breathing entity. Outside, the lights of Ouagadougou city glittered, oblivious to the momentous decisions being made within, decisions that would cast Burkina Faso's very future into profound uncertainty. Traoré walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes lost in thought as he gazed at the city below. "How much reserves do we have?" he asked, not turning from the pain. Dr. Amina Konaté, the central bank president, consulted her file, her voice heavy. "Officially $400 million. But most of it is held in accounts in Paris. We can't access it now." "And gold?" Traoré pressed. "We have 78 tons of registered gold reserves," Dr. Konaté began, her voice trailing off with a hint of hesitation. Traoré completed her thought with a bitter smile, "But that too is in France." Economy Minister Ousmane Sonko shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Mr. President," he pleaded, "you need to understand the gravity of the situation. You're threatening to leave the West African Economic Union. Rejecting the CFA franc is economic ruin." Traoré turned, fire blazing in his eyes. "Or liberation," he countered. "Tell me, Sonko, how can we be an independent country when we can't even print our own money? The CFA franc is the last visible chain of colonization." Sonko spread his hands in exasperation. "All of Africa uses this system. Mali, Niger, Senegal, all of them." Traoré approached the table, his voice low and cutting. "And all of them remain perpetually struggling. Do you know why? Because every time we print a banknote, we have to deposit dollars to the French treasury in return. We pay them to use our own money. Is this freedom?" A heavy silence descended upon the meeting room. Everyone present knew Traoré spoke the truth, yet for 70 years, West African countries had been bound to the CFA franc, a relic of the French colonial monetary system. Independence, in many ways, had felt like merely a piece of paper. Real power had remained firmly in Paris. Dr. Konaté took a deep breath. "Mr. President, we all know you're right. But practically, what can we do? We don't have the infrastructure to create our own currency, no printing presses. And if people start withdrawing money from banks tomorrow morning." Traoré calmly placed a file on the table. "That's why I've been secretly planning this for the last 3 months." The advisors stared at the file in surprise. "Operation Sankara," Traoré announced. Thomas Sankara's unfinished dream, financial independence. He opened the file, and as the detailed plans for a new currency to replace the CFA franc were revealed, a collective gasp filled the room. "The Burkina gold," the finance minister stammered, his eyes wide. "This is impossible. Our foreign exchange reserves aren't sufficient." Without international recognition, Traoré smiled, pulling a small, shiny disc from his pocket. It was a gold-colored coin, embossed with a baobab tree on one side and the country's map on the other. "Prototype of the Burkina gold," he said, his voice brimming with quiet confidence. "Made from 100% domestic gold, extracted from our own mines, processed on our own soil." Dr. Konaté struggled for words. "But foreign companies control our mines. They monitor our gold exports." Traoré's eyes gleamed with an almost mischievous light. "Not anymore. Not." The economy minister jumped to his feet, a sudden understanding dawning on him. You nationalized the gold mines? Traoré confirmed calmly, officially tomorrow morning. But the operation began 3 hours ago. The army is now taking control of all mines. French and American company executives are being politely escorted to the border. Those in the room looked at each other in stunned amazement. The move was bold, undeniably dangerous, but also incredibly astute. What about boycotts? Sanctions? Dr. Konaté pressed, her voice trembling slightly. The West will do everything to crush us. Of course they will, Traoré confirmed, his gaze unwavering. They'll want to punish us. But to punish us, they first need access to us. And this is where the second phase comes in. He pressed a button, and a world map appeared on the screen. Certain countries were marked. Russia, China, Iran, Turkey, India, Brazil. For the past 6 months, we've made secret agreements with these countries, Traoré revealed. Direct trade with their own currencies, bypassing the dollar or euro. We'll sell our gold directly to these countries, and they'll provide us with the technology and products we need. I didn't know about this, the economy minister said, his voice barely a whisper. You didn't need to know, Traoré replied kindly. If French intelligence had sensed even the slightest hint, the financial blockade we're experiencing today would have started months ago. Dr. Konaté took the coin in her hand, holding it up to the light. Beautiful, she murmured, but will people accept it? Habits don't change easily. Traoré smiled. People have been storing gold at jewelers for years. We're offering them something of real value instead of worthless paper money. He paused, his gaze sweeping over his team. But the real impact is here. He opened another file. Inside were designs for sleek, intuitive digital interfaces. The Burkina Digital Wallet, Traoré announced. A free mobile app for every citizen. Gold-backed digital currencies. 100% transparent, secure, and most importantly, completely outside the Western banking system. The finance minister shook his head, a complex mix of incredulity and dawning admiration on his face. This is crazy, and brilliant. But how will we convince the people? Just then, Traoré's assistant entered the room. Mr. President, the connection is ready. Traoré turned to his team, a confident glint in his eye. Convince the people? Let me show you. The large screen in the meeting room flickered to life. On it appeared the faces of leaders from 5 different African countries. Mali, Niger, Guinea, Togo, and Benin. Presidents, Traoré began, his voice strong and clear. I believe we've all received the same news. The West has pulled its economic weapon again. But this time, we're prepared. I want to share our plan. 2 hours later, when the Pan-African meeting concluded, a new energy vibrated in the room. Fear had given way to a steely determination. Ibrahim Traoré looked at his advisors as the first light of day began to paint the sky outside. Dawn is coming, he said quietly, not just in Ouagadougou but across Africa. Dr. Konaté closed her laptop. Will you make the announcement to the people tomorrow morning? Traoré shook his head. No, I'll do it now. People should know the truth before they go to the bank. They should feel pride, not panic. His request for an emergency broadcast to the national television station was approved within minutes. As the team made final preparations, Traoré examined the prototype in his hand one last time. The gold coin gleamed under the soft morning sun. Thomas Sankara, he whispered, as if addressing the enduring spirit of the revolutionary leader, today we complete your unfinished work. At precisely 6:30 a.m., as the people of Burkina Faso were preparing their breakfasts, they were surprised to see President Traoré on their televisions. He stood in his military uniform, calm but radiating an unshakable resolve. People of Burkina Faso, he began, his voice resonating with gravitas, I appear before you in these early hours to make an important announcement. Last night, French banks and Western financial institutions launched an economic war against our country. They cut off our access to our money. They stopped transfers. They cancelled loans. In homes, cafes, and on street screens, people looked at each other with growing concern. You know why they did this, Traoré continued, his voice rising, because we want our independence. Because we demand control of our resources. Because we say that Burkina Faso belongs to the Burkinabe. The camera zoomed in on the gold coin he held in his hand. From today, we stop using the colonial currency, the CFA franc. We start using our own money, the Burkina gold. a currency backed by 100% domestic gold, carrying real value. Then, he held up his mobile phone, showing the glowing app on the screen. And this is the Burkina digital wallet. It will be distributed free to every citizen. You no longer need banks for your money. The digital gold will be directly in your wallet. People stared at their screens in amazement. For some, this was a frightening change, for others, a long-awaited liberation. Don't worry, Traoré said, as if reading their thoughts. All the money in your CFA franc accounts will be converted to Burkina gold at twice the value. No one will lose. Everyone will gain. After this sentence, across the country, small cries of joy mingled with whispered questions. But most importantly, Traoré continued, his voice echoing with conviction, we will be the ones controlling our money. We will be the ones determining our destiny. And we are not doing this alone. The screen split, and next to him appeared the faces of the other West African leaders. They all conveyed the same message: Mali, Niger, Guinea, Togo, and Benin, all leaving the CFA franc system on the same day, at the same time, and switching to their own gold-backed currency. This is not a revolution, Traoré declared, it's an evolution. The final link in our independence. Now we are truly free. When the speech ended, something extraordinary began happening in the streets. Instead of rushing to banks in panic, people were discussing the Burkina digital wallet app they had started downloading on their phones. It was simple to use, sleek, and most importantly, it belonged to them. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. In Paris, at 7:45 a.m., the French central bank was gripped by an emergency meeting. The executive responsible for the Africa desk stared at the data on the screen in horror. 6 countries left the system simultaneously, he stammered, trembling. This is a coordinated move. And what's more? The bank president asked impatiently. The digital wallets have been downloaded millions of times in just a few hours. People are accepting this. There's no run on the banks. The president reached for his phone. I need to call the Ministry of Finance. We must start sanctions immediately. The ministry is already calling, his assistant said, extending the phone. The voice on the phone was panicked. The mines are gone. Energy agreements cancelled. Permissions for military bases revoked. All of West Africa is slipping out of our control. Back in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim Traoré sat in his office, calmly monitoring international reactions. As expected, Western media was drawing doomsday scenarios. Economic collapse begins in Africa, West African countries commit ruin, Traoré condemns his people to hardship. But on the other hand, unexpected messages of support poured in. Russia, China, India, Turkey, Brazil, South Africa, all with congratulations, offers of cooperation, and promises to recognize their new gold-backed currency. Dr. Konaté entered the room, her face alight with excitement. You won't believe it, Mr. President. 4 million people have downloaded the app. That's nearly a fifth of our population. Traoré smiled. People have tasted freedom, Konaté. There's no going back now. And what's more, Dr. Konaté continued, there are thousands of downloads from other African countries too. Ghana, Congo, Senegal. Everyone is talking about this. A week later, Ibrahim Traoré stood in a small village square. Villagers had gathered around him, eager to see their new leader. An elderly farmer, clutching his phone, looked up shyly. I don't know how to use this, Mr. President, he admitted. Traoré sat down next to him, gently taking the phone. Let me show you, he said softly. Look, when you press this button, your wallet opens. Here you can see how many Burkina golds you have. The old man's eyes lit up. This is the real value of my money? Yes, father, Traoré confirmed. And no one can take it from you. They can't freeze your bank account, can't stop a transfer. This is your freedom. The villager pressed the mobile phone to his chest. For the first time, he said with a trembling voice, I feel like my money is safe with me. This simple sentence confirmed the profound impact of Traoré's actions. This wasn't merely an economic shift, it was a deep psychological liberation. IMF and World Bank analysts had predicted that Burkina Faso wouldn't last for weeks. A month passed, and the economy was still standing. 2 months passed, and trade volume began to increase. 3 months later, Ibrahim Traoré was invited to the BRICS summit. At the meeting in Moscow, world leaders listened carefully to Traoré. Eastern and southern countries wanted to learn the details of West Africa's bold move. The gold standard was abandoned 50 years ago, the Russian leader noted. You're bringing it back. It's quite interesting. We haven't gone back to the past, Traoré replied, his gaze firm. We're going to the future. Digital gold. A currency backed by our own resources. This is next generation independence. The Chinese leader leaned forward, clearly impressed. Your digital wallet technology is impressive. It could offer an alternative model for the global financial system. After the summit, the agreements Traoré signed for his country created a wave of alarm in the Western press. Direct energy and military agreements with Russia, technology and infrastructure projects with China, medicine and agriculture cooperation with India, food security programs with Brazil, industry and education partnerships with Turkey. Western newspaper headlines screamed, Burkina Faso moving away from the West, Traoré's dangerous game. But Traoré just smiled as he flew back to his country. We're not moving away from the West, he told Dr. Konaté. We're just moving closer to the whole world. We no longer have a single master. We have many partners. On his phone, the Burkina digital wallet app glowed. The statistics were impressive. 12 million active users, 2 million daily transactions across 6 countries, 0 downtime, 0 hacks. 6 months passed, and West Africa's gold-backed currency evolved into the African gold. 14 African countries had now joined the system. The old colonial currency, the CFA franc, quietly faded into the pages of history. Ibrahim Traoré was now seen not just as a country leader, but as a pioneer of a continental movement. One morning, at the opening of the new Central Bank of Burkina Faso building, Traoré stood at the podium. Behind him, magnificent gold-plated doors shimmered. Behind them, the country's gold reserves, now reclaimed from foreign vaults, were securely stored. Today, we're not just opening a building, he told the cheering crowd. We're opening a new page in our history. Once, our gold was kept in foreign vaults. Now, it's here, on our own soil, under our own control. As the crowd applauded, a woman in the back rows was quietly shedding tears. She was Thomas Sankara's wife, the widow of Burkina Faso's visionary leader, a man whose life had been cut short decades earlier. He would have loved to see this, she said, shaking Traoré's hand. Financial independence was his greatest dream. We're bringing his vision to life, Traoré affirmed, but the only reason we can do this is because of the seeds he planted. Outside the city, at the newly established Burkina Technology Center, young engineers were hard at work. They were developing a new version of the digital wallet app, empowered with blockchain technology, energy efficient, and most importantly, entirely designed and coded by Africans. Burkina Faso had not just created a currency, it had built an entire ecosystem, from mining to refining, from digital technology to security. The entire system was now designed by Africans, for Africans. The IMF president, speaking in front of cameras, managed a forced smile. Our dialogues with Burkina Faso and its allies continue, he stated. We are examining their new currency system. The unstated translation. We can no longer stop them. We have to deal with them. The French president had embarked on an Africa tour, promising a new beginning to countries that were once his colonies, but no one believed the old stories anymore. At a press conference, an African journalist asked directly, how do you assess West African countries' transition to gold-backed currency? We respect their independent decisions, said the French leader with a tense expression, but I'd like to warn about the risks. His words were cut off by laughter that rippled through the room. A year later, Ibrahim Traoré was once again on the international stage, this time at the United Nations General Assembly podium. His speech was short but powerful. A year ago, 6 countries took a bold step. Today, 22 African countries use the United African Gold. Our inflation rate has dropped. Our trade volume has increased. Our technological investments have tripled. Western delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They told us we couldn't do it, Traoré continued, his voice gaining momentum. They told us we would collapse. They told us we would face hardship. Traoré paused, a knowing smile playing on his lips. But we didn't tell them anything. We just did it. Unending applause filled the entire hall. An African country had freed itself from centuries of economic bondage, and this was just the beginning.